As you all know, the original Animal Crossing never got the chance to shine with true online multiplayer, even if it was planned at one point. So Nintendo made sure to include internet connectivity with the next entry. I mean, a game like Animal Crossing on a handheld system that could wirelessly connect online for true multiplayer? Well, looks pretty good to me. Surely nothing could go wrong. Today, we finally discuss the most interesting quirks unique to Animal Crossing Wild World. Let's start off with Wild World's most infamous oversight, though I'm not sure if that's the right word for it. I'm of course referring to the seeding issues that plagued Wild World's online connectivity for the entirety of its lifespan. In this game, there are instances where trees, rocks, and buildings are programmed as invisible seeds within your town. For example, while the museum may look like this in-game, internally, the game just spawns this building wherever its seed is located. In this fashion, whenever you start a new save, the game essentially just drops seeds around a map in a somewhat randomized manner. These seeds are then responsible for telling the game what objects and buildings to render and set up in your town. This approach works fine, and there's nothing inherently wrong with this seeding system serving as a marker for where objects should go. After all, the game's seeds were exclusive values that could never be manipulated or obtained by the player in the vanilla game. Except, not everybody plays by the rules. If you were around for the DS era of Nintendo games, you are likely aware of several cheating devices that were sold for the DS. The most common of these were the Action Replay series, manufactured by UK company Daytel. With these devices, you could actually modify the memory values of your Wild World save to place invalid IDs and items in your inventory. So, if you were clever enough with hacking, you could actually place Wild World seeded item IDs in your inventory. Since, again, the game basically uses seeded items as a way to determine where objects should be placed and rendered, things get extremely messy if you drop these seeded items out of your inventory and place them in your town. Doing so appears to be harmless, but upon reloading the map, any hacked seeds that were dropped will be interpreted as the real object that their seeded ID points to. This means hackers could customize their town with invalid buildings, trees, rocks, and more, which become permanent upon saving. And yes, all of these seeded items function normally for the most part, meaning one could technically have multiple valid copies of Nook's store or the town hall. Now, this all may sound harmless. After all, I mentioned that you would need an Action Replay device to even get access to these seeds. But as I teased in the beginning, Wild World marked Animal Crossing's first foray into true online multiplayer. Of course, this means that other players miles away could visit your town and play with you so long as you had their friend code. Even though a friend code was required, this was the mid-2000s, and online forum websites such as AnimalCrossingCommunity.com were becoming increasingly popular. Wild World also sold quite a bit more than the GameCube original, so a lot of people were playing and looking for friends on Wi-Fi to trade and play with. Yet of course, this is the internet, and not everybody plays nice. That is, if people visiting your town had an Action Replay device and hacked some seeded items into their inventory, they could actually visit you through Wi-Fi and drop those seeds in your town. This means, upon map reload, your town could be maliciously filled with invalid buildings, trees, rocks, and more. Since the seeded items are typically invisible until the map reloads, innocent hosts could end a wireless session, save their game, and return to their entire town plagued with seeded buildings. If the seeder was truly evil, they could block entrances to other buildings and even prevent players from leaving or entering their own house. Even further, seeders could actually drop so many buildings and objects that the game fails to render all of them and simply crashes whenever it tries to load your town. In extremely severe cases, there are reports of Wild World seeding plague actually overwhelming the Nintendo DS memory itself and bricking the entire system. Even if your system isn't entirely bricked, if a town was seeded enough, the copy of Wild World would permanently crash upon startup. Since most DS cartridges use built-in flash memory, this means that the save data related to the bricked town is stored on the cartridge itself. With no way to access or delete this save data outside of the game, a Wild World cartridge could become permanently bricked if the owner was a victim of seeding. This is becoming a real problem in the resale market, where used copies of Wild World often do not work at all since it belonged to a previous owner whose town was seeded and the cartridge bricked. Now, it is technically possible to fix a Wild World cartridge if you're savvy enough to edit a DS save file on a PC, or if you own an Action Replay device yourself. However, most people playing the game did not have the means or know-how to fix their games, leaving them with a useless cartridge. While there definitely were some malicious players online, it may also seem easy to blame Nintendo for this entire seeding problem. You might think that there should be some checks or validations on a player's inventory before allowing them to visit a town, or better yet, maybe some actual validations on the save file to prevent duplicate copies of buildings, but I'm willing to cut Nintendo some slack. I think it's important to remember that this was one of Nintendo's first attempts at true online multiplayer. Development of Wild World was also pretty rushed and released just 2 years after Dobutsu no Mori E+. As such, design concepts like seeded buildings and objects were borrowed from the GameCube original, where you can actually customize your town and place seeded items around in a similar manner. All this said, while I understand that Nintendo never anticipated the seeding plague of Wild World, it was still a huge issue back in the day. Of course, DS games could not receive online updates or patches, so this online seeding issue persisted throughout the entirety of Wild World's online life, from 2005 all the way to 2014. Next, let's talk about an actual oversight that was largely Nintendo's fault. For years after Wild World's release, Nintendo would encourage players to return to the game by distributing special gifts over Wi-Fi. Just 1 month after the game's North American release, Nintendo distributed the special Red Tulips item through Wi-Fi. This item arrived attached to a completely blank letter with no sender. If players tried to place this item in their homes, they'd find that nothing was actually placed at all, and they could not move or interact with the item. Regardless, this item still took up a space inside your home, so it was permanently stuck wherever you placed it. Given the ominous nature of the blank letter and the glitched item, many players were afraid that Nintendo distribution servers were hacked and were scared to connect online. Warnings about this began to spread across the internet, but Nintendo quickly took notice and disabled the distribution. Nintendo later put out a statement acknowledging the glitched item and took responsibility for it. They stated that receiving a letter containing a red tulip could cause interference with gameplay, and blamed the problem on a temporary error with the upload tool. Apparently, this item was only distributed for a few hours, so if you happen to get this letter and the glitched tulips, I suppose this would count as one of the rarest officially distributed items in Animal Crossing history. Speaking of Nintendo distributions, I previously mentioned that Wild World introduced monkey villagers into the series. However, these monkeys could only be obtained through special real-world promotional events. For example, in North America, you would physically have to go to a Toys R Us store or the Nintendo store in New York to have a monkey villager wirelessly transmitted into your game. This was accomplished in North America and Europe through this special distribution cartridge, known as the Relay version. This cartridge and its contents are widely available online, and you can actually slot this into a normal DS and turn that system into a distribution hotspot. This can be abused to send infinite copies of monkey villagers to other DS systems that are running a copy of Wild World. The game codes for these Relay cartridges are NTR AM4E USA and NTR AM4P EUR. As such, you might expect there to be a cartridge for Japan, which would, in theory, be coded NTR AM4J JPN. However, upon research and questioning a few Japanese players, such a cartridge never existed. While Japanese players still had to receive monkey villagers through physical download stations, these stations differed from their American and European counterparts. While the American and European stations were quite literally just setups with regular Nintendo DS systems inside, the Japanese stations were instead handled with PCs connected to the internet. So, although we can preserve a lot of distributed data by just purchasing US and European download station cartridges, a lot of this extra data is seemingly lost for Japanese players. This means it is incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to now receive new monkey villagers in a Japanese version of Wild World. While monkey villagers are seemingly lost to time in Japan, Wild World does have a few glitches exclusive to the Japanese version. One of the most interesting glitches involves a peculiar issue with writing letters. Wild World, of course, allows you to write letters to your villagers, but if you do a specific set of steps, you can actually perform in-game memory manipulation using a buffer overflow. By putting a letter in the last slot of your inventory, inserting some spaces before and after the villager's name, and positioning the cursor before the villager name, you can then spam any character to move the villager name off the page entirely. From here, you can move the cursor as far to the right as possible and just hold down any character. After listening to this wonderful character spam, you'll eventually hear the sound of bells being deposited, and you'll notice your bell count goes from 0 to millions. What's happening here is that by performing these steps, we're actually going beyond the bounds of the letter, and we're now inserting characters into different sections of memory. This glitch allows for you to go up to 256 bytes beyond the beginning of the letter, which conveniently begins to modify your inventory. After a certain point, you begin writing memory values directly to your wallet, which allows you to get millions of bells in seconds. This glitch was discussed for quite a long time on Japanese forums, dating back to at least 2011. Anyways, as you can imagine, this glitch is pretty powerful and essentially works as a memory hex editor, allowing you to overwrite things in your inventory with basically whatever you want. As long as you know where you are in the buffer, and what Japanese character hex values translate to proper item IDs, you can write a myriad of items directly into your inventory. And yes, this includes the seeded objects and buildings we talked about earlier. So as long as you're on a Japanese 1.0 version of the game, I guess you don't really need a cheating device to access seeded items. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed our first look at some of Wild World's exclusive quirks and glitches. While I generally focus on the GameCube original, I've come to learn more about each game in the Animal Crossing series and discovered so many peculiarities and interesting tidbits exclusive to certain versions. That said, we may have a city, or perhaps an island, to visit in the future. But that's going to do it for this video. Special thank you to my patrons and YouTube members who keep this channel going with their financial support. Shout out to my highest tier supporters, Lunascape, Cynthia, Mentis98, Silly Marina, Villager, Cass, Hornet, Tarumi, Vinny Diddy, Pidge01, Kai D, ComfyBoy404, Japan Eat, Tammy's Head, Comfy, Exploding Bears, Holly Molly, Sitz, Idrin, Zip, Bobby Nard, Clifford Longhead, and The Amazing Wolfie. And as always, thank you all for sticking around and watching. Until next time.